Tom, I know you used to shoot at the competitive level, regionally and even nationally, right? Tell me about that, how it got started.
In 1969, I met a fellow by the name of Bob Mellon. Well, I was stationed at the air station in New River, North Carolina. And Bob was interested in archery, and we sort of teamed up, and we traveled up and down the East Coast on the weekends shooting competitively. Well, eventually, both of us ended up winning our respective divisions along in the Eastern Regional Finals indoors. And at the time, the newspaper at the air station put an article up about us. And the next thing you know, we get a call, and they want to send us as a team to the Marine Corps wants to send us as a team to Cobo Hall in Detroit. Well, Bob and I were more willing to go, and it's kind of funny because it was our first competition nationally, and I think the first day of shooting we were down probably about 1,000 people. And we didn't do too bad. I mean, we ended up somewhere in the top 500 anyway. But it was a wonderful experience. The people that were there helped us a great deal. We learned a lot, and we had a really good time. And I don't want to say that the Marine Corps' money was well spent, but
So, had you already been coaching youngsters at that point, or did that happen
yes,
around?
4 years prior, I had started coaching. In 1966, I had started coaching some youngsters at the air station at McDeck at Quantico while I was stationed there. And Roger was one of those students. I think he was about 14 years old at the time. There was a sergeant major there by the name of Baker, and he had a son, and I coached his son. And that was my when I first tested my wings, so to speak.
Well, what are some of the key things you try to impress upon youngsters when you're coaching them? I know you coach them from the time they're this tall to,
Well, the very first
late
thing
18 or so.
about coaching is that you not only develop their particular sport, but you also try to develop their character, and the two seem to fit together. Archery is a discipline like any other sport, and you try to teach good values as you teach your sport. And overall, I'd say the most important thing in archery is form. But at the same time, you've got to realize that everybody is built different. Everybody does things different. So you have to take what the archer gives you and get the best out of them. That's the deal.
I know you've talked about the mental discipline, the mental part of the game, especially once you're at a more serious competitive level, being very important.
Right. You can teach them the basics and get them good form and all of that business. You can develop a plan for them so that they can grow inside that plan. But eventually they hit a level long about when they become intermediate archers, where it becomes more a mental game because they've got all of the basic tools that they need to shoot well. Then it becomes a mental game of knowing how to take care of your equipment, um, doing the exercises that are necessary to maintain good physical conditioning, and getting your mind set to where you think you can win, and where when you do fail, you can recover and become stronger and learn from your failures.
How did you get involved with the King George arrow splitters?
Um, I was reading a local newspaper called the Journal,
Mhm.
and Mark Fike wrote a article on the then fledgling King George arrow splitters. We weren't named that until later, and Todd Morotek was their main coach at the time, and they were shooting over at Canterbury Farms at the indoor horse arena during the winter. And I joined Todd over there after reading that article and talked to him for a while. And then that very evening, I started working on some of the kids' equipment because it was a little bit out of shape. And the rest, they say, is the story.
Yeah. What's it like seeing some of your proteges now advancing for the first time to the 4-H national competition?
I am thrilled to the bottom of my core. Every coach prays for somebody that can rise to that level. And I am fortunate twice in that I've got two girls that are extremely good archers. Both of them are very competitive, and they're very good kids. And it's a dream come true to see them come along and have an opportunity to shoot at the national level. It's a great thing. I'm just tickled pink.
You mentioned that you help the kids tweak their equipment. I know you refletch their arrows for them. You do all kinds of work, and then you also built a range at your home, right? You received some kind of grant via the NRA, was it?
Well, the NRA gave us a grant and allowed us to buy some equipment that allows us to use my farm as a place to shoot. All of the money from the grants goes into the target backstops, into the equipment for the children. We bought bows, we bought arrows, we bought 3D animals, we bought backstops, and all of that would not have been possible without the NRA. We've tried going to local businesses and things like that, and they're willing to help short term, but the NRA, their grants have been a real godsend. They've allowed us to expand our operation greatly.
Yeah, you don't always think of the NRAs being involved with archery.
No, you don't, but the NRA is actually involved in all the shooting sports. And the more that I learn about them, the more I come to realize how involved they are with particularly youth programs. It's amazing to me that they realize that the future of this country lies in its youth and their development.
If you had to give a ballpark estimate of how many youngsters you've worked with, coached over the years, could you hazard a guess?
To count them.
It's got to be hundreds, huh?
Yes, it's in the hundreds. I started helping Stan Parmentier and Paul Vogel and Joe Herbert with the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts at Fort Belvoir, and I was with them for a good 20 years. Mm-hmm. And that's where I learned the actual coaching craft. Of course, I went to a couple of schools, but I think probably Paul and Joe and Stan and a few others really helped me get started doing what I love to do.
You had to get certified as an instructor?
Yes, you do.
What are some of those courses?
Well, you can go to the National Field Archery Association has a course that you can take, and you become a certified instructor at the end of that course. USA Archery is who I've taken my courses from, and that's through Lancaster Archery. I went to Lancaster Archery, and Larry Wise is the instructor for Lancaster Archery's USA Archery School. And I became a certified level 3 USA Archery coach. And USA Archery is essentially responsible for all archery in the United States. And they're probably best known for their school out in Colorado Springs, Colorado, that trains Olympic archers. They send our teams to the Olympics.
Mm-hmm. Who would you consider your biggest archery mentor for yourself?
Oh, gee whiz. Really, my brother-in-law. He brought me back into archery along about 1984. He helped me join the Belvoir Bow Hunters, and that he, along with 24 other people, including myself, are the ones that started Belvoir Bow Hunters. And there was just a deep love of archery there, and there were people that had been doing it for a long time, and I learned a great deal from him. I learned a great deal from the people at Fort Belvoir, the people I've mentioned, Paul Vogel, Stan Parmentier, Joe Herbert, my brother-in-law Ronnie, and there's a guy out there who is still a buddy of mine by the name of Dave Hesseltine. They've taught me an awful lot.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned Roger earlier. You're talking about Roger Summers,
right?
King George resident, carpenter, good guy, loves to hunt, loves to bow hunt.
Yes.
And he was kind of a special visitor at the Arrow Splitters practice shoot last week.
Yeah.
And he brought his herder's bow that he bought, that he used when you were teaching him. And he also brought a trophy that you presented him, and I tell you, it was incredible to watch his eyes light up when he saw you and he brought out that trophy and the memories that that brought back.
Yeah, memories came flooding back to me too during that time. I was surprised after all these years that I would recognize him, as a matter of fact, but I did, and you know, I could see the eyes never change.
Mm.
And I could see in his eyes, and Roger, as I recall, was a really good kid. And it was a lot of fun being around him, and it was even more fun coaching him.
Yeah. Well, what's it like knowing that you made such an impact on so many young people's lives via archery?
You never know what kind of an impact you make until later on. There's kids that I'm teaching today that I may never know the impact. But it's wonderful to see guys like Roger who remember and who grew up with the ethic that this particular sport brings. It's one of the safest sports that there is out there. It's one of the most disciplined sports out there. And it teaches life lessons. And it's great to see someone. I think that Roger works on his own.
Mm-hmm.
And there are very few entrepreneurs these days, particularly in this day and age, that are willing to strike out, and that talks about his character. So I had a piece of that character, is what I'd like to think. And I'm very blessed to have come in contact with him. And he has blessed me in many ways, evidently.
Mm-hmm.
Some ways I don't know. If you got time for a story, I'll tell you a little story about impact.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember I was a staff sergeant. I was coming home on leave from my second tour in South Vietnam, and I was coming to see my parents. And there was a boy who lived across the street, whose last name was Parmalee. And as I came down the street, I saw him playing out in the street. Well, I saw the same guy years later in Quantico, Virginia, and he was a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps. And he came running up to me and he said, "Sir, do you remember me?" Because I was a warrant officer at the time, and I said, "No, I have no idea who you are." He said, "I'm Parmalee. I was your neighbor, and it's because of you that I'm here." So I never realized when I stopped and talked with him in the street that day that I'd make that kind of an impact on his life. And I think that all of us impact people in positive ways throughout our life, and eventually we run into somebody that says, "I want to be that guy." Mm-hmm. So if I only have one student that looks at me and says, "I want to be that guy," it'd be a great thing. It'd be a wonderful, wonderful story to be told later.
Right. Well, you retired from the Marine Corps in 1984, I believe, right? You enlisted in 61, was it?
61, yes.
61 when you were 17.
I actually enlisted in
Delayed
1960 when I was 17, and left for recruit training in 1961 on a buddy system with several guys out of my high school.
And how long have you lived in King George?
We've been here 16 years.
16 years. So, well, Tom Breese, retired Marine Corps captain, archery coach, great guy. Thanks a lot for your service to our country and all you do for the kids around King George.
Well, thank you for your support.
Thank you.